Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Kennedy, Deputy Public Advocate for Education and Opportunity at the Office of the Public Advocate of Jumaane D. Williams. It is a pleasure to be with you all virtually. And as virtual events happen, we are in the midst of fixing a few technical problems that we will have resolved in just a few minutes. We will get started in just a few minutes. Please stay tuned and we will be back with you in just a moment. Thank you. Hello and welcome. We are doing one more audio test and we will begin in just 1 minute. You are in the right room and we are grateful that our interpreters are here as well with us. We will be back and begin in 1 minute. Thank you for bearing with us.
All right, peace and blessings, everyone. Love and light to you all. Good afternoon. My name is Jumaane Williams, Public Advocate for the City of New York. Thank you for your patience as we worked all the technical difficulties. So pleased and honored to host today's virtual citywide forum on mayoral control of New York City schools. My hope here today is to provide greater access for the public to give testimony to the state. This event will complement the state's borough hearings on mayoral control of New York City schools that will close at the end of January 2024. All New Yorkers are welcome to join today's forum to give their testimony, including students, parents, school staff, and community members. I'm grateful to each of the many community members who have spent the past 2 months going to the state's hearings throughout New York City to give testimony in person, to inform what recommendations are needed from our city on mayoral control of New York City schools. In order for that to have happened, I have to thank our leaders of the state, Chancellor Lester W. Young, and Commissioner and President of the University of the State of New York, Dr. Betty A. Rosen. I also have to thank Senator John C. Liu and his staff for their support of this virtual forum today as chairperson of the New York City Schools Education Committee. Thank you to my team at the Office of the Public Advocate as well, including First Deputy Nick E. Smith, Deputy Public Advocate Elizabeth Kennedy, Community Organizer for Education Opportunity Lupe Hernandez, Director of Technology Development and Data, J.C. Brilliant, Deputy Director of Technology Development and Data, Keaton Sinha, and Office Manager, Fabian Muntu. As a parent myself and having been a New York City public school student, it's no small feat to make the time to engage and share your own recommendations. So I salute our students, parents, our caregivers, educators, school staff, advocates, providers, community members, and more who have made the time to join us today to make sure your essential and important voices and solutions are heard and considered. We have 3 asks of you tuning in today. The first, listen and engage online with this forum. Share it with a friend now to join us on Zoom, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. 2, we ask and encourage each of you to submit written electronic testimony on New York City mayoral control to New York State. Written electronic testimony must be submitted by this Wednesday, January 31st, 2024 at 5 p.m. And it can be submitted, and I believe we're going to put the link on where it can be submitted via the New York State Education Department, NYSED. Third, we encourage you to still attend the final in-person state hearing on Staten Island tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. at New Dorp High School, 465 New Dorp Lane, Staten Island, New York, 10306. And we will be joined in a few by Councilmember Rita Joseph. Looking forward to that. And then I'm going to hand it over to a very capable Deputy Public Advocate of Education Opportunity, Lisa Kennedy.
Thank you so much, Public Advocate, and thank you to all those tuning in for being here today on a busy Monday to give testimony to the state about New York City mayoral control of our schools. We will hold this panel the way that these state hearings have been functioning. We will have panelists come up, and each panelist will have 3 minutes to give their testimony. We will have a visual as well for folks to be able to see their 3 minutes as it runs. After each panelist, we will then bring up the next panelist to be spotlit to give testimony. And we will do that for as many panels that will fit our time here today until 4:30 p.m.
Can I also just give a shout out to our ASL interpreter? Thank you so much for providing the service.
Absolutely. Thank you to Beth Zurich and Tali Tallman, who will be with us today for ASL interpretation. Our first panelist we will bring up will be panel Stephanie Bonilla, Neil Berry, Aggie Sanchez, and Amanda Pitts. Our amazing community organizer, Lupe Hernandez, will now promote the first panelist to begin testimony. It will be Neil Berry.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank Jumaane Williams, and I'd like to thank John Liu for this opportunity to share my thoughts on this mayoral control. First of all, I'd like to say 3 things. One, the New York State report has not come out, and I'm kind of questioning Governor Hochul's decision to put it in the legislature. That's something that I find kind of maybe not offensive, but it's something that's not democratic. That report can indicate some of the deficits we have. It probably would be more better than just talking about the reforms, but talking about the process of 20 years of mayoral control. I think that report would be indicative of what direction we should move in, because other states are moving in a different direction, as well as other major cities. Second, I would like to talk about the class sizes and the funding of the schools. So yes, that's a major concern. I think Jamari Bridgeport pointed out exactly how it should be, that the law is about class sizes and what happened that situation. So a mayor that doesn't want to abide by some of the laws is kind of questionable what it's thinking. And this is not to be a directed slander at him, because he's done some good work around the literacy programs. But also these mayors elected every 4 years and their administration changes. So we're not guaranteed that the next mayor will have the same type of thoughts. And maybe finally, I'd like to talk about the panel of education policy and the majority of being elected by the mayor itself. I remember when this thing was started that they said they would elect, they would put some requirements to the mayor in the ongoing process that require him to be a much more accountable. And they agreed to this, and this mayor has appointed a majority of his own constituency. And there are complaints from the Bronx and other boroughs as I've watched about this process. So those are the 3 things that will bother me, but I am so thankful to have the opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will bring Maggie Sanchez up for remarks. We are troubleshooting. Thank you for waiting. We will be promoting the next panelist momentarily. Thank you for your patience. So the panelists will need to click
Join.
into joining as a panelist when it prompts. So Maggie Sanchez or Stephanie Bonilla should receive a prompt now to join as panelists.
Hi, this is Maggie Sanchez, the Citywide Council Public Advocate appointee. Hi, everyone. Sorry, Citywide Council on Special Education. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I couldn't figure it out there. The prompt wasn't popping up. So yeah, regarding mayoral control, the big thing that stands out to me every time I attend the PEP is the amount of mayoral appointees that kind of go along with the what the mayor, like the mayor's agenda, and specifically in regards to education issues or contracts that need to be approved or not approved actually. That is something that I would like for that to change. The mayoral control is really getting in the way for students with disabilities in particular, because the mayor, every time there's a change of mayors, there's a new the kind of like the whole entire system has to move around the mayor and has to kind of accommodate or kind of adjust to the changes, and I think it hurts a lot of the students with disabilities and multilingual learners, students in temporary housing, because a lot of the policies that sometimes are passed by the mayor and past mayors also don't really involve a lot of these students or don't really take into account these student populations. So the class size also is a big issue that I think the mayor is accountable for all of that right now. And the way the system is designed is that there are not a lot of parent voices on the table. There are not a lot of family advocates on the table, especially in the PEP, which is one of the deciding, I guess, bodies in education. So we know that it's going to take time to come up with something that will take over, but I think the focus here has to be how the existence of mayoral control, how that's not working, how that's not serving our students and the most vulnerable of our with all these goods. So,
Thank you. Upcoming on our panel next. Thank you. We are swapping our ASL interpreters for Andrew Tallman. Thank you and welcome to our interpreter, Tolly Tallman. Next up, we have Stephanie Bonilla. We will actually have Lucas Healy next up. We may begin.
Can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, they're giving you a thumbs up. All right, all right. My name is Lucas Healy, and I'm a D75 student in inclusion of a program at telecommunications. I'm asking you to allow Mayoral Control to end. Mayoral Control is responsible for the fact that for the last 2 years, my friends and I started school with no speech teacher. The bludgeon cuts Mayor Adams made would not allow my school to hire staff we needed. And as a student with autism, I have experienced having to do more with less than my general education students because students like me are an afterthought. I have been testifying since I was 12 years old. Since I was 12 years old against policies that affects students with disabilities. That put us in harm's way. And and where it gets us and that puts our teachers in harm's way. And where did it get us? In a city as rich as New York City, students like me should not have to fight for scraps that at the hands of this mayor or all the mayors before him. I'm successful in spite of Mayoral Control, but not all students like me are that lucky. Under Mayoral Control, more families had to sue the DOE to get more service. Mayoral Control has not made our school systems like a place where students like me can thrive. Our disability community cannot afford another year of staffing shortages, budget cuts, and learning loss. Give us a Give us a fighting chance and end mayor control now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are working to get our next panelists up. And again, thank you for bearing with us in our technical difficulties. Hi again, Stephanie Bonilla. You should receive a prompt to unmute and be able to give your testimony. Alexis is here. Next up, Alexis Kirkland Palmer.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexis Kirkman. I'm a youth leader for an organization called the Circle Keepers, as well as a senior at Harvest Collegiate High School and a student member of Teachers Unite. We need more counselors, social workers, and less police in our schools. Instead of funding for police to be, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Alexis, take your time.
I'm so sorry. Okay. Where was I? Okay. We need more counselors, social workers, and less police. Instead of funding for police in our schools, we need to use the money in a more useful way that would actually help young kids in schools, especially low-income schools, which always get the short end of the stick. Doing practices like restorative justice helps support students that helps us thrive and help us thrive. It urges students to build a stronger, more powerful community with each other by listening to what they have to say. A big part of restorative justice practices involves teaching the youth how to learn from their mistakes. RJ empowers youth instead of breaking it down. My experience in past schools were not the best. They would practice punitive punishments, which means they would give out harsh and harmful punishments for bad behavior. This led students on a more difficult road in life. Using punitive practices disrupts not only their learning, but minor problems will stay with them and follow them for the rest of their life. These types of students that face nonstop punitive practices are more likely to end up going out of school, or worse, go down a long path of negative behavior. When students go to school, they are in a different environment. They would come and expect to arrive in a welcoming and safe community, but instead they are faced with schools who use punitive practices, and the first thing they see are cops. Even when individual cops are nice, it is still the first thing they see, rather than a counselor or restorative justice leader, or even a family member. Coming into a community like this is harmful and creates an unbalanced and unsafe environment, especially for certain students whose home might use punitive practices. What I want more than anything is for our mayor, Eric Adams, to pass a budget that moves money away from policing young people and towards the restorative justice practice, which means funding money to hire school-based restorative justice coordinators. This includes youth active parent coordinators, counselors, and social workers. This brings huge support, and it encourages students to build a safe and welcoming community and acknowledge just what they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexis. Next two panelists will be Chantal Lowe and Beatrice Reed. You'll need to accept the request to become a panelist so that we can promote you to begin your testimony. That's Chantal Lowe and Beatrice Reed. Next up, we are going to try to promote panelist Jay Brown.
Yes, thank you, Public Advocate Williams. My name is Jay Brown. I'm a product of New York City Public Schools, proud parent of 2 public school students. I've been actively involved as a parent leader since my oldest first entered pre-K through Title I PAC, PTA, elected to school leadership team in CEC, currently president of CEC 21. I'm speaking in my personal capacity. Opinions I express are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of the City of New York, DOE, or any body I am elected to. And I need to say all of that because elected parent leaders are periodically advised, as we were 1 week ago today, that we must provide that disclaimer anytime we speak at a hearing, as well as in a host of other situations, pursuant to Title 53 COIB Rule 1-13D for any public servant mentioning their city title. Now, I often hear elected officials speak publicly. I introduce them to speak at my CEC meetings, and I've never heard one reel off that disclaimer before they speak about positions they take. I've never heard the mayor state his opinions do not necessarily reflect those of the City of New York before he opines on legislation that is not yet law. Parent volunteers seem to be, who are elected to non-paying roles that are strictly advisory, are held to stricter oversight, which brings us to mayoral control, the superseding structure that all New York City school governance falls under. An undemocratic structure in which a political figure has absolute control of the largest public school system in the country. 20 years, multiple mayors have demonstrated the faults inherent in this system. It's not about any particular mayor. Multiple admins ignored efforts to lower class sizes, stating it was impossible without funding. And now, with Albany fully funding foundation aid, New York City had long been denied. This mayor still stands in the way of class size reductions. It's a system devoid of accountability or any checks and balances, where the panel for education policy with a majority of mayoral appointees is a rubber stamp. At our December CEC 21 meeting, a PEP mayoral appointee joined our Zoom chat to argue against the class size law implementation while in the PEP meeting at the same exact time. The logical conclusion, they did not feel they needed to devote attention to the PEP meeting they were in, since their votes are a foregone conclusion. We currently have a mayor who's making significant cuts to school budgets, but recently said he had no clue of the extent of how many programs were being funded by stimulus dollars until the chancellor briefed him. A mayor who made schools wait for much needed fire inspections so developers who've donated to him could skip the line. As major cities move away from mayoral control, and with none having a structure as absolute as ours, we need a new democratic structure with fewer mayoral appointees. We need to decouple this decision from the state budget and to empower community stakeholders with actual decision-making power. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we will have Jeff Luck.
Hi, my name is Jessica Luck. I'm a public school parent in Manhattan in District 2. I'd like to thank the public advocate and his staff for giving us this opportunity to speak. I'm asking the state education department to end mayoral control and replace it with a democratic school governance system that empowers students, families, and staff. Watching the testimony at the previous hearings, which was almost exclusively against mayoral control, I was particularly moved by the teachers' testimony. By the time many of them spoke, it was 12 hours after they arrived to work that day, many after long commutes. The fact that they were spending their free time waiting for 3 minutes to plead for the ability to serve their students was heartbreaking. I fear that these passionate, dedicated teachers will be forced to leave the school system because of the harm done by mayoral control. New York is one of the greatest cities in the world. We should have one of the greatest public school systems in the world, one that is fully funded and racially integrated, with culturally responsive, sustaining education, STEAM, and schools that are green and healthy. Instead, we have one with budgets slashed every year, that has parents begging for their children's IEPs to be met, that has overcrowded classrooms and crumbling buildings. My child is in a well-resourced elementary school with a well-funded and active PTA that pays for a lot. And still, it is a struggle to manage with the yearly budget cuts by the mayor. For example, we have not been able to afford a science teacher in her elementary school for the past 2 years. This fall, I had the pleasure of doing an art project with a first grade class. Have you attempted to simultaneously meet the needs of 27 5- and 6-year-olds by yourself? Well, my child's teacher does it every day. Of course, this issue could be corrected by the class size reduction bill that was overwhelmingly passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor in September 2022. But the mayor has done nothing but obstruct it at every turn. We need funding to decrease class sizes and increase school staffing. Anyone who cared even the slightest bit about children or education would not only fully fund schools, but advocate for increased funding. Instead, the mayor has made his priorities crystal clear by increasing police and decreasing teachers and counselors. His draconian, unnecessary cuts and chaotic managerial style leaves principals scrambling to meet his whims. When we vote him out in 2025, the issues of mayoral control will not simply go away. Please make sure that mayoral control is ended so we will not continue to have these issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Gia Lee.
Hey everyone, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, so apologies. I'm actually home. I'm a public school teacher. I'm sick with COVID at the moment. It's my 3rd time. So apologies for my voice. I testified before the mayoral control hearings in Queens, where I'm a resident, and in Manhattan, where I'm a teacher in District 1. I'm a special education teacher. And I want to speak adamantly that our local elected officials, and thank you so much to our public advocate and your staff for holding this hearing, because we often feel that our voices go unheard. I can testify to you that as an educator in the New York City public school system for about 24 years, that's pretty much at the beginning of mayoral control, it's been a roller coaster. We're at the whims of whoever the mayor is. I've watched countless educators who are dedicated and passionate to culturally responsive, whole child, developmentally appropriate curriculum and pedagogy lose their faith in the system and leave. We are in danger of losing more currently because it's starting to feel a little hopeless since Hochul announced that she would make extending mayoral control another 4 years along with the state budget. Those two things need to be decoupled. I would argue that in the minutia of our day, we're watching teachers get narrowed into curriculum because of political promises to improve reading outcomes or math outcomes based on contracted curricular programs that are not actually based in any science. Educators in New York State have to go for a master's degree in education, which means that they've become more than experts in teaching to students and not to curricula, and certainly not to standardized testing. Most alarming is the impact on students with special needs and students who are English language learners. I've been told countless times, particularly under different mayors who have different agendas, that the reason why my student with dyslexia or my student with a particular learning disability isn't learning to read is because I am not teaching the teaching curriculum, whichever one, be it Teachers College, Readers and Writers Project, be it whatever kind of curriculum they impose on us, that it's because I'm not implementing it the way I'm supposed to, which is the rhetoric we're hearing about teaching a curriculum to integrity versus fidelity. We need all of our elected officials to join us in the classroom, really listen to teachers, watch our Facebook private groups where teachers are begging before they all leave. Thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Next up, we have Devorah Unger Cafiero.
Hello all. To my almost 5-year-old daughter, I am mommy. To my colleagues, I am an instructional coordinator. And in the 13 years prior, I was known to my students and families as an early childhood teacher. It is with these three perspectives that I speak with you today of my profound concern, the imperative need for the removal of mayoral control of the schools of New York City and for a democratic system stated by Just Luck. So thank you. As a parent, I find it discerning that Mayor Eric Adams announced the $568 million away from pre-K for all and halted the expansion of 3K for all. New York City's free preschool program was a national model. However, under the new mayoral administration, we are watching free, high-quality education, early childhood education, be demolished. In December, the Panel for Educational Policy, also known as the PEP, pushed funding away from early childhood programs with Agenda Item 6 and Agenda Item 12, totaling over $418 million over multiple years. Despite significant opposition, the individuals appointed by the mayor into the PEP prioritize political agendas over the voices and needs of the community and of the people who live here. Governor Holcha, too, must be scrutinized for endorsing the mayor's control. On the same day, she stated a $100 million commitment to addressing critical shortage of childcare supply. Why would anyone support leaders invested in giving hundreds of millions in funding to behind-the-scenes contracts rather than directly supporting those who are on the ground doing the work? As an IC, I must express my observations since the new administration took charge. I observed many in-house trusted experts and professionals from the central office disappear in the blink of an eye. The toxic work environment created under the new administration was evident from the headlines about people leaving and the questionable appointments of individuals lacking relevant experience. Before I give more details, I would like to ask you a question. Would you let a head nurse of pediatrics do open heart surgery? I experience this every day in the field. We have new administrators in the division that have no training, never taught or supervised in the field of early childhood. The insertion of these numerous middle managers also have added to the division's budget with their inflated salaries. The DECE once centered around community and was known for unity and its collaborative spirit. This new administration halted quality training, which prompted our union to intervene, and the lack of commitment to transparency. This has been observed at almost every public hearing when these chancellors say, "We will get back to you on that," and leave us hanging with no answer, ever. Sadly, I hate to say, I'm also observing a trend in the field of, "Oh, I heard this from that person," instead of, "Let's review the policy and let's review the handbooks." The part of my heart that aches the most is for those that care for the young children in the city that I love. I hear them say every day, "Will we have a job next year? Will we get funding next year?" Why are we being told to comply with this new curriculum rollout when the mayor just pays us like babysitters and not qualified educators with degrees that they do in public schools? These are just a few of the questions I hear every day, at least 2 times a day. Now that you have heard these questions too, I would like to ask you, how are these educators, primarily female, expected to fully and authentically care for young children in their classroom with these concerns? Most of the teachers in the field do not get prep periods, and some do not get the public school days off. They come into work every day and are expected to do the work of a public school teacher without the benefits of a unionized teacher. If you want to know more, trust me, just go out into the field and you can ask anyone. That is not from a public school. The future of our great city depends on our collective commitment to genuine leadership and accountability. Just as the chancellor has also said, the whole point of mayoral control is accountability. We don't see it. Let us prioritize the well-being and education of the city's young minds over personal and political agendas. In conclusion, I implore each of you to reflect on the essence of mayoral control. Are we truly here for the children, or are political motives steering our city's actions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, Larry L. Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Praying all is well. My name is Larry Davis. I work for the Department of Education. I am what they would call a parent leadership specialist. I have worked with parents since the beginning of mayoral control. In the beginning, they gave me all of the training that I needed to understand the work that needed to take place in order to deal with the public and the parents and helping them to understand the system, because it's a very big system. They taught us and they treated us with an understanding that this is about customer service and that the parents of the children are the customers. And you know what they say, the customers are always right. The Department of Education trained me quite well when we first started under mayoral control. It has come now to a point where they are not even listening to parents. Parent coordinators aren't receiving the training that they need. Family leadership coordinators aren't receiving the training that they need. Family support coordinators are not paying attention to the 311 complaints. And I've done thousands of those when I was a parent support officer, district family advocate, borough family advocate, because it's important for that follow-up to be a paper trail. I'm used to the public advocate's office doing surveys and sneak calls and sneak visits to offices and schools just to make sure everything is in order. And then there's a report given. You guys need to do this better. You need to do that better. I'm not for mayoral control at this current moment. This current moment, families are begging to help their children, to get their children what they need, to stop young men from being suspended because they have a condition with a disability, as opposed to giving them the help that they need. At the ground level, they are suffering. Parents are going quiet. They don't want to say anything, but they do need the help. They do need someone that's not going to make them collateral damage. And this system right now, as it is not doing that. The parent voices need to be bigger. They need to be louder. I'm a young man who does the work well, and I'm sitting now in the Eagle Academy because the FACE office decided that I was not important to the system. I worked in District 23 as the family leadership coordinator as an emergency because I had come back from being a union rep, and I went right in and did what I needed to do to make sure that it was about the work. Parent coordinators received the training that they needed. Parent leaders received the answers that they needed when it came to Title I, when it came to A660, when it came to President's Council, when it came to formulating all of the answers at the district level. When the central office needed something done, because we had dual reporting, we worked for the central office and the superintendent, like the superintendent worked for the central office, we worked for the district also. Whatever they needed done in reference to CEC and the training to the CEC, I did that work. All of the compliance and everything was in order, but I sit now as a person who's not important to the system. I'm not saying all of this because of what I'm going through. I'm saying this because something has fallen apart in the system where the voices of the parents, in order to help their children to survive, is not being listened to, and they do need to be listened to at a better level. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have queued up a couple of people to join us next. We will just need for you to accept the invite to be a panelist. So that would be Tina Zhang, Amanda Pitts, Cheryl McMillan, Stephanie Bonilla. I can accept the invite to be promoted. Karina Garcia, we are promoting you now.
Hi, thank you for having me. I was not planning to talk, but well, I am one of the parents in the CEC District 11, and I have a child with intellectual disability, and another child that is already 20 years old, and she coming from the public schools too. And I believe education is too much important to be in the hands of just one person and their own policies and their own believing. When a mayor appoints a chancellor, this chancellor will put policies in place, and maybe those policies could be good or on time to work. But next 4 years, next we will have a change. The mayor could change the chancellor, or we will have elections and change the mayor. Then if the chancellor will be changed and everything starts again. It's like we are in circles. We're going in circles, like never give the time to something to work. So I think this is too much important to be in the hands of just a politician. This is education is not politics. It's more than that. Thank you.
Next up is Tina Zhang, followed by Cheryl McMillan.
Hi, okay. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for accommodating me with the speakers list. I'm a high school student from Brooklyn, and I'm a youth activist with organizations like the NYC Youth Agenda, Yaya Network, and Dignities in Schools. I just want to start by saying that all the testimonies from this forum and the forums before, especially uplifting what students like Lucas Healy have shared, thank you for your powerful voice. All these testimonies have spoken to what the people need. We need more democratic school governance, and mayor control is not that vision. Last December, I attended the panel for education policy meeting to testify. Advocates like myself were there to ask the PEP to reject the revisions to A412 and continue to implement the changes that would protect student rights and minimize the harms of NYPD and school discipline. In the 3 hours I was there to watch through, with the PEP, I was immensely disappointed by how many of the PEP members, especially the folks who were appointed by Mayor Adams, after our public testimonies, I watched the mayor-appointed PEP members sit there without expressing their perspectives. The lack of engagement from the people who are making direct decisions impacting my education is really frustrating. We deserve people who take our concerns and experiences to heart and really grapple with the implications of how it will impact the students the NYC DOE is supposed to serve. We need people who show that they care about public education through their engagement, like through a mechanism of accountability. If they had to be elected by us to our school board, CECs, PEPs, they should earn our confidence that they have our interest. I recognize that many of the mayor-appointed PEP members serve within their communities or have children in the DOE system, but from what I've observed, many of them don't act like they have a stake during the PEP meetings because I don't even know the positions of more than half of the PEP members, except that they rubber stamp their agenda items. At least I expect some acknowledgement or conversation after hearing our testimonies. Our democracy needs critical deliberation. That does not happen when more than half of the PEP autopilots through these meetings, especially under the influence of a mayor who undermines my education, or the youth tokenism on full display at the PEP where students have no voting power. My vision is that we empower stakeholders like students, parents, educators to understand the education system in order to make decisions reflecting our needs and broader vision. Beyond just the frustration and the discouragement of this austerity landscape and anti-democratic processes within our schools, I want to lift up the effort of Public Advocate Jumaane Williams for hosting this platform. Your work to stand with us is seen and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina, and the many students that have joined us here today. Your leadership is notable, and the whole city thanks you.
Thank you.
We also wanted to mention 2 things for housekeeping. If you are a student here with us today, please let us know in the chat or let us know by asking a question so that we can make sure to prioritize your voice in speaking as soon as possible and giving your testimony. It's so important that we have students' voices not only heard, but really understood, and we are so grateful for you to be here today. As a second housekeeping item, we wanted to make sure that folks know if you would like to be seen on the live stream, you will need to make your video on so that we can spotlight you. If you do not want your face seen, that is okay, but we wanted to let folks know the difference between being seen on the broadcast or just being heard on the broadcast. Thank you so much. Next up, we will have Moimeka next.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Advocate Jumaane Williams and your staff for listening to us parents. I'm a parent, public school parent in District 2, Manhattan. I live in Yorkville. And I'm speaking to advocate once again for the end of mayoral control. And once again, I've just listened to a lot of parents and teachers and students advocating for the same thing. It seems pretty unanimous at this point. The problem with mayoral control, as I see it, and as far as I can understand as a parent, is that we are beholden to a mayoral agenda. And it's not necessarily just this mayor, but at any mayor. And it leaves our children as bargaining chips for the mayor to do whatever agenda that needs to happen. And frankly, children should not be used as tools for any agenda. it seems like the most obvious way to do this is to have the communities making the decisions about what needs to happen in their own schools. Plenty of people are qualified, plenty of organizations are coming up with strategies on how to implement this. It's obviously something that won't happen overnight. It'll take time, but we need to take that time and invest in figuring out a way to do it properly for the sake and for the future of our children and for the future of our city and frankly, our country as well. My student is in first grade and she was in a kindergarten class that had 3 classes at a public school, and her first grade class is down to 2. So she's one of 27 students with 1 teacher who is struggling to manage a classroom of first graders. And if anyone knows what a first grader is like, that is an impossible ask. And there is no way that every need of every child is being met. You know, the needs range from special needs to end up. So there needs to be smaller class sizes, and we need to have a proper infrastructure to support the public schools properly. There are many children who speak other languages, with children with disabilities that need to be addressed, and you can't just have a room with 1 teacher that is unmanageable. It's really important we have a system that takes care of all our students, right? My school is lucky to have a very strong PTA. I mean, I live in Yorkville, that goes without saying, but many schools do not have that. It's not a possibility. There is no PTA that can supplement the things that are missing when they're school. There aren't enough teachers, there aren't enough services, there aren't enough social services, there aren't enough mental health workers to handle all the needs of various children. We have immigrants, we have asylum seekers that all need attention, and there's no reason that all children are not looked after. It's mind-baffling that this is still a problem. We won the campaign for fiscal equity. It was a 30-year fight. There are funds from the state there, and it's still not enough. And thank you.
You can finish if you'd like.
Yes, so we won the campaign for fiscal equity. The funds are there. It's still not enough, and we should not be cutting our school budgets even further. So just to say, mayoral control has had its time, and we need to bring the power back to the communities. We know what our children need. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And next up, we will have Noemi.
Hello? 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 Do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, greetings to everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Noemi Diaz, born and raised in Washington Heights, Uptown, if you guys didn't know. Formerly a DOE educator and currently a CC member of District 6, advocating for youth and families. As I mentioned all of this, I'm speaking on my personal capacity, and I'm not representing the DOE or the CC in any capacity. Today, we'll continue to discuss the mayoral control. I want to highlight 3 positives. There's been an efficient in decision-making that trickles down from the chancellor to some of the superintendents. There's accountability directly from mayoral responsibility, and there seems to be somewhat of a unified vision trickling down. However, there's challenges that do exist, like a potential lack of community input and the adaptability of the diverse neighborhoods that have needs. Also, the risk of a one-size-fits-all approach. Over-reliance on the mayoral leadership may lead to political volatility affecting educational policies. Considering the future, addressing the public safety concerns, especially in areas like Washington Heights, is crucial. Shelters without community input have led to safety issues, promoting a need for increased police presence during school hours. To shape the mayoral control's future, integration of community input is essential. Balancing mayoral authority with local community involvement is key, especially in addressing safety control and also educational control. Engaging with our communities and incorporating insights to safety protocols ensures to secure environments during the day's school's routines. So looking ahead, mainly the mayoral control for decisive leadership is important. Enhancing our community's participation and collaboration among stakeholders is crucial. Mayoral control has been a topic of discussion that is growing for a transition of elected control. As we continue to hear, to achieve this is crucial that the advocates for the establishment of the PP, where all the members are chosen, it becomes a democratic process. This shift would ensure that the community has a direct voice in shaping the education policies and decisions. The goal is to move away from a centralized mayoral control model that embraces a more inclusive and representative governance structure. In summary, the push for democratic evolvement from the traditional control would be the very best for our kids and our future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, Cheryl McMillan.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm Cheryl McMillan. I'm a former employee of DOE. I was a teacher. I live in Staten Island, and I'm currently the education chair of the Staten Island branch of the NAACP, and we'll be speaking from there. So as we thought about it and talked about it, we do support mayoral control. However, we know it's not perfect. So there are definitely changes that must be made in order to ensure our children have a bright future and no child is left behind. And we can start, as already been stated, the PEP. It has to be changed so that everyone has a fair opportunity to speak their mind and not one person controls the action that impacts all of our children. We are very concerned that if it doesn't change, and I lived through the past system where they had the community board, and I cannot even imagine going back to that. And so we don't have anything current. We really need to think about using what we have currently, but making vital changes. Our children deserve it, and it has to be done equitably. And that means dividing every vote equitably and having all voices at the table. And if this is true, what you're doing is real and it's going to impact our children, please, please, please continue to do that job and think of our children first. And that's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Tamira Reed.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tamira Reed, and I am a PA appointee to the CCSE. I'm also a parent of a student, a 7th grader, who's been in public school, as he would say, his whole long life. And I'm here on his behalf in my capacity as his parent, his mama, to read his testimony. He's a little nervous to get on here, so I'm just going to read it in. Thank you. Hello, I'm a D2 7th grader, and I've been in New York City public schools all of my long life. I'm writing this to respectfully request that we end Mayor Adams' control over our schools and really over our lives. Respectfully, Mr. Mayor, you have spoken a lot about how resilient kids are and how we'll be okay, even when you cut millions and millions of dollars that make our access to education possible, especially to a safe and a fair education. But our resiliency isn't a choice. If you and the other adults in charge put kids first instead of last, maybe we wouldn't have to be this resilient all of the time. It's like a fake compliment when you call us that, resilient. I'm starting to really hate that word. We shouldn't have to be left with your mess like this. And public schooling is indeed a huge mess. When my room is messy, my mom asks me to clean it, and I do it because it's my room and I'm responsible for it. So I'm asking you, sir, to please clean your own room. This means putting things back in their place, putting them back where they belong. In your case, it means putting the money back where it belongs, in schools with students. It means putting back the essential services for students with disabilities like me so that we can actually learn. It means putting back our paras, our therapists, our ICT co-sped teachers, and our school psychologists and counselors. When you take away supports like these from students with disabilities, you are taking away our civil right to an appropriate and fair education. You're basically telling us that we are not worthy of being supported, that we are in fact not worthy of learning alongside our peers. They say, the adults anyways, that history repeats itself. This is a history students like me do not want to return to. A history before IDA that kept students like me out of classrooms and sometimes entire schools. That kept students like me from graduating high school, from going to college maybe, from making friends and feeling good about ourselves, from having a job even, or maybe even being able to rent an apartment. You are putting all of the progress that people have fought so hard for us to have in jeopardy. You are the mayor of an amazing but super complicated city, and that is a gigantic job. And then you are also responsible for the 1 million+ students, including almost 270,000 students with disabilities in our public schools. Our school district is like a city itself, it's so big. And our schools need to be a central focus, not an afterthought or an added burden that comes with your job as mayor. I think a good leader is someone who's capable of acknowledging their own mistakes and maybe even admitting when they are not the best person for the job, when they have too much on their plate to serve the people they represent with the care and the attention that they deserve and they really need. I hope you are a good leader in this way, Mr. Adams, and you will see that students and everyone in our school communities need more than what you or any other mayor are able to give them. Respectfully yours, Oliver Duffy. Thank you.
Just want to, there's a lot of students speaking today, so I'm thanking all the students. But Mr. Duffy, that was a particularly powerful testimony, so thank you for that. And Mom did a great job. Hopefully you're listening. We really appreciate it. And you even came right on the time, so it was an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Next up, we have Paulette Healy.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, wonderful. My name is Paulette Healy, and I'm a proud immigrant and a product of the New York City public school system prior to mayoral control. And I now have 2 children with disabilities enrolled in the New York City public schools, and one of them enrolled in D75. I'm a long-term disability advocate, and I'm here to ask that we end mayoral control now. I've testified at both the Brooklyn and Manhattan hearings, and this has been the only hearing that I have attended where students, other than my own kids, have had an opportunity to testify. So for that, I thank you very much, Public Advocate. Now, under Mayor Adams, and under this particular mayoral control, I am fighting to make sure our District 75 schools don't lose their entire paraprofessional budgets because of the cuts that he's making. I'm also fighting to prevent a number of truncations that are on the PEP docket that pushes out programming for students with disabilities, like ASD Nest program at West Prep Academy and the D75 program at PS 323 in District 23. We just have to look around to see the damage this mayor has already done, and he's only been in office for 2 years. But mayoral control systemically has harmed our children and our families and has prevented children like mine, who are students with disabilities, an opportunity to progress and to find their full potential. Under mayoral control, we have become the most segregated school system in the country. Our schools are not the diverse landscapes where we can learn about each other's cultures like it was when you and I, Jumaane, were in high school together in the 90s prior to mayoral control. If you step into any high school at this point, you can see the segregation. There's almost an invisible line that goes right down the building. Community voice was also removed in this particular iteration of school governance. I should not have to have fought for 10 years to have a District 75 middle school in my district. Mayoral control also does not allow for consistent educational experience for our students. We spend millions of dollars and countless of organizing time and development towards creating a mosaic curriculum under de Blasio, only to have it thrown away by our 7th chancellor under my experience as a parent. And then award new contracts that are in the millions to United Way and to Eagle Academy. And we already know that cronyism runs rampant in this particular administration. We keep hearing about our school system being the tale of two cities. Well, mayoral control is to thank for that. No one wants to go back to the school boards of the past, but we can all agree that the draconian cuts to our schools under this mayor have endangered all of our students, families, and teachers. And we have an opportunity to really reimagine a truly democratic school governance model, and it's what our families deserve. Whether you call it mayoral control or a mayoral accountability, tyranny is tyranny, no matter how you try to rebrand it. We need to end mayoral control now and think about how we can redevelop a school governance system that is not the previous school boards and not what we have now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ana Rojas.
Hello?
Hello, Anna, we hear you.
Thank you so much for everything that all these students, teachers, community do for public education. If anyone has been in a school ever, they're going to go to the leadership, to the principal, to the teachers, and the children, the students. I want to tell you how many times I've sat. I have COVID as well for my first time. I'm a grandmother. Very concerned with public education. With mayoral control, it is at the whim of politics. At these PEP meetings, where these appointees have sat through hours of students, teachers, parents, explaining how intergenerational cooperation of learning, of wanting to truly educate our children and community. It's like the same kids in the kindergarten asking the principal over and over and over again, and having these PEP members hear, listen, or not listen, just kind of sit through these testimonies that come from our heart for listening to what our young people have to put up with and how we have to help them, and then vote without even saying why, explaining where they are just, it's so disheartening. Can you imagine being a child, being a young adult, being someone that does not need to be in, it needs to be the center of our attention in education. Every 4 years, give me a break. How can that be an accountable education strategy. Please, and let mayoral control end. Let it end. It has not worked. It's not working. We need to envision wonderful things that includes all stakeholders, even grandparents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Tanisha Grant.
Hello, everyone. We want to thank the Public Advocate's Office for holding this hearing and continuing to be a champion for the people's voice. Hello, my name is Tanisha Grant, and I'm speaking as a Black mother of 3 children and grandmother of 4. I am also the Executive Director of Parent Support and Parents New York. My oldest daughter will be 30 this year, and her academic career started during the time mayoral control was implemented. So as a very involved parent who has sat on the CEC and worked with students, educators, and parents every day, I have a lot of lived experience as a parent who witnessed what our whole school communities have been like since then. I fully support a competent plan to end mayoral control. My number one reason to end mayoral control is accountability. Since 2002, there has been no accountability under all 3 mayors who have had mayoral control. Any movement towards equity in our public schools have come from the people, the parents, only to have our voices silenced. Time and time again, parents, students, and educators have to fight for fair things like culturally responsive education, our campaign for fiscal equity, restorative justice, nurses, playground, infrastructure upgrades to our schools, special education teachers and services, cops out of our schools, high quality education, etc. And we constantly advocate against wasteful spending in our school budget, which has happened under all 3 mayors. Every time we ask for real change, you give us symbols, like the CEC. Parents on the CEC mostly can only make recommendations, which are rarely taken seriously. Let's not forget about the PEP, which has a super mayoral majority. This is not a fair process at all. The truth is, under mayoral control, the community has very little power. Our concerns continue to go unheard. The leadership style of all 3 mayors have been to shut out the voices of parents, students, teachers, and taxpayers. Under mayoral control, the unpaid labor that parents do for their school communities gets co-opted by the mayor and the Department of Education. They love to take credit for all our hard work to give students the education they need. I understand that it is not a simple thing to end mayoral control. I also understand anything worth fighting for isn't easy. I am fully committed to doing all I can to see a new day where the power is back where it belongs, and that is in the hands of the community. We can't have public schools without public input. I'm not talking about the very insignificant town halls that are held now. Those are controlled by leadership who pick the questions they want to answer. I know people have testified that mayoral control would be better with more community input. The problem is leadership picks their favorites and shuts the rest of us out. There is zero transparency, and we are often straight out lied to. The whole community isn't included, and if we push back, we are shut out. With mayoral control of our public schools, the culture has been toxic. We have politicians who have no experience in school-related issues thinking that they have all the answers to everything. Nothing beats the lived experience of our school community voices. Under mayor control, I have seen programs and access to resources like summer jobs and rec centers all but disappear. There's no more home for economics or shop. We don't have home ec, we don't have music and art in every school anymore. Most of the schools in Harlem where my son goes to school, which is Eagle Academy, are severely underfunded. We have schools that are overcrowded because charter schools are sharing public school space. I'll stop there and I'll send my testimony in because it's kind of long and I want to respect everybody else's time. But thank you for, again, having this forum. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Next up, we have Shavana Williams.
Hello, how you doing? I wasn't gonna speak, but this is something that I feel like I need to speak at. Um, my name is Shavonna Williams. Though I am elected council member, I speak on behalf of my own personal opinions and capacity, and not those of my district or council. I do speak as a parent only. Thank you to the public advocate for this time. I am a parent of a high schooler and a junior high school student, also mentor to over 20 children in New York City. I vote that my choice is that we end Mayoral Control. Due to Mayoral Control, teachers are stressed just as much as parents. And being a parent volunteer, I hear the voice of parents when they can't advocate for their own child due to Mayoral Control. Our children are being failed by this. Teachers with 25 plus students can't expect to focus on the curriculum, daily change, and the needs of each individual student by themselves. But schools cannot hire due to budget cuts. Budget cuts have took away necessities that students in my neighborhood need, such as free eye exam programs and even tutoring within the schools because they can't afford to pay teachers to stay. After school programs under DOE can't afford staff, so students whose parents need that extra help can't get that. Schools that need social workers are without one social worker to 300 plus students. And everything we do, we say community. But why is the community not helping making the decisions we want for our children? We need to be the front, back, and middle of choices made on our children's education. Without parents, there is no students, and without students, there is no education system. Give us our acknowledgement. Abuse is a misuse of power and authority. Mayoral control is a form of that abuse, not on schools, but on parents in the community, because the school is just the building. When you take from the root, you ruin the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. We will need a few people to accept the invite to become a panelist so that they can give their testimony.
They can also raise their hand.
You can also raise your hand if you have not yet been called up for testimony with the raise hand feature, or would like to give testimony. So you are moved. You can raise your hand and that will help signal to us that you would like to give testimony. Next up is Lainey Hameson.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, okay. Thank you very much for holding these hearings today. I have lengthy testimony that I will submit to you in written form because I have a lot to say on this. But first, I want to echo what Tanisha said about accountability, which is one of the primary myths surrounding mayoral control and a common phrase used by Mayor Adams himself. But there's been very little accountability under mayoral control. For example, when he first ran for mayor, Bloomberg promised to lower class size in the early grades, yet class sizes increased sharply during his administration. And by 2013, his last year in office, they had risen to the highest level in 15 years. By that time, he renounced his earlier pledge and proclaimed he would fire half the teachers and double the class sizes if he could. Not only did he fail to lower class size, but the DOE during his administration failed to use state funds meant for smaller classes according to law, according to not one, not two, but 3 different audits from the state and city controller's office. When de Blasio ran for office, he also promised that he would commit to specific class size reduction goals in all grades and to achieve them by the end of his first term. And yet once elected, he renounced that promise and said he would wait until all the CFE funding was provided by the state. Now that the New York City schools are finally receiving their full complement of CFE funding, more than $1.3 billion in additional annual aid, the state legislature passed a law requiring New York City to phase in smaller classes in all grades, yet Mayor Adams, too, is doing everything to oppose the law, has increased class sizes for the last 2 years, and by his actions is making it impossible for the city to comply by continuing to cut school budgets and slashing the capital plan for new school construction. Under mayoral control, autocratic administrations have repeatedly violated laws concerning special education, bilingual education, as well as student privacy. The DOE has still not complied with the state student privacy law passed in 2014, and their failure to eliminate the required data privacy and security protections has led to repeated breaches of the most personal information of literally over 1 million current and former New York City students. In fact, one could easily argue that mayoral control has led to less accountability, not more. The one phenomenon common to nearly all districts under mayoral control is a vast expansion of the charter school sector, which is not under democratic control, but is composed of schools run by private corporations with far less accountability and oversight from any governmental body. In fiscal 23, charter schools siphoned off more than $2.7 billion per year from the Department of Education, plus an additional $100 million in annual rental costs. According to Mayor Adams, the cost to the city is projected to increase by another $730 million over the next few years, while at the same time, he is proposing cuts to the DOE budget of more than $500 million every year for the next 3 years. And according to the Education Law Center, we have lost over $2 billion in charter transitional aid from the state. The only district in the states denied this funding because Mayor Bloomberg made an agreement with them that we should not receive this aid. In 2009, there was a bitter battle over whether mayoral control would be renewed or amended. And there was a large privately funded campaign to renew mayoral control with very little changes. Unbeknownst to us at the time, two pro-charter billionaires, Eli Broad and Bill Gates, secretly contributed millions to this campaign, Gates more than $4 million alone. After mayoral control was renewed with few changes, Gates explained his donation this way, quote, "You want to allow for experimentation. The cities where our foundation has put the most money is where there's a single person responsible. Has mayoral control meant accountability, or more likely, the unleashing of a massive wave of privatization and experimentation led by the whims of billionaires?" I think the answer is clear. I have more testimony that I will submit in written form, but thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Robert Mertfeld.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Thank you so much for having me for this additional very important hearing. Instead of preparing remarks in terms of what already has been delivered on the many issues, I thought I shared today some preliminary research on the history of the hearings on extending mayoral control and what insights we can extract out of those. So that everybody understands, we're now on the 7th extensions of the system, but it's quite a pivotal moment for that. And the hearings that have been conducted in all the 5 boroughs by the New York State Education Department were actually already conducted in the year 2008 and 9, when Michael Bloomberg asked for the first extension after the system was created in 2002. This is now the second time that the New York State Education Department conducts the hearings in the 5 boroughs, but under de Blasio, it got quite messy. Hearings were either held then in Albany or skipped altogether for the 1 or 2 year renewals that de Blasio got. And then only in 2019 did Albany really come back to New York City, but only then to Manhattan to conduct proper hearings. In 2022, during the pandemic, state lawmakers then held a 7-hour-long virtual session. And today we now have finally the comprehensive review of school governance by the New York State Education Department. So it's very interesting to get that overview, because us as advocates can rely on, a vast precedent of, body and testimonies that exist already for this crucial moment. I don't know how much more time I have left. Unfortunately, I don't see the screen on my mobile phone, but just, one thing I wanted to highlight is the parental rights advocacy that was conducted throughout the history of these hearings. In particular, there's a fellow called Stephen Sanders, who was the State Assembly's Education Committee chair between 1995 to 2005. And he was one of the original architects of mayoral control. And in 2008, he turned against the system. And let me just read his statement, and then I end on this. He said, "The original 2002 law authorizing mayoral control was not intended to give the mayor absolute and unquestioned power over all education policy. Among its provisions was the creation of a high-level citywide board of education to provide a measure of oversight and checks and balances. The citywide board was expected to exercise its own judgment and due diligence on policy matters of citywide and systemic importance, and also be responsive to the views of the public. However, the board has been rendered virtually irrelevant. This is absolutely contrary to the intent of the law. At the same time, many parents want reasonable input into how their schools are run. And so this was the fellow who was the architect, who then turned against it in 2008 and presented these remarks for the hearings in 2009. So that's all for me today. Thank you.
Mayoral, thank you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
What was the name of the gentleman that you said?
The name of the gentleman is Steve Sanders, head of the Assembly's Education Committee between 1995 to 2005. And this was a remark that's from 2008.
And he was the person who you said was the architect of Mayoral Control?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Abraham Velasquez.
Thank you so much, y'all. So for over 25 years, Brotherhood Sister Soul has been at the forefront of social justice, educating, organizing, and training to challenge inequity and champion opportunity for all. We submit this testimony to argue against the continuation of mayoral control over NYC schools and advocate for return to community control. Decentralized control allows local residents and parents to address the needs of their community and respond to particular problems facing their district. The current structure significantly limits the voices of parents and youth who are most directly impacted. While the transition to local community-controlled school boards will take time, and it's necessary for the state to start this process now. Policies proven detrimental to student learning, safety, and mental health have been implemented and maintained under mayoral control, including the heightened presence of police in schools, the installation of metal detectors, standardized testing impact on curriculum, and merit pay for teachers, all having disproportionate negative effects on the most marginalized young people. Data from the DOE and the NYPD reflect these disparities as Black students and those with disabilities remain most punished in schools, while there is no evidence to suggest a difference of behavior based on race or what considerations have been made for students with IEPs. Under mayoral control, there has been a history of impeding or defunding community-led efforts to improve student learning and school culture. Brotherhood Sister Soul believes in the wisdom and agency of communities to decide for themselves. Mayoral control assumes and practices the exact opposite. Local education control is a central fixture of US tradition, something cities like Chicago, LA, Detroit, and Oakland recognize in returning control of their schools back to its residents. It's past time for NYC to follow suit. Youth, while unable to vote for their elected officials, deserve to be heard regarding something so central to their lives. They know the impact of education policies better than anyone else, and they're more than just statistics for us to monitor. Here are some quotes from our members. I don't think the mayor should be in control. The mayor doesn't have the students' best interests in mind. That's from Mariama, age 17. Chastity, 18, says, the mayor shouldn't be in total control because that takes away from democracy. Because as can be seen with Mayor Adams, he removes vital funding. When asked where they would like to see funding going in their schools, our young people said things like, Mimi, who's 14, more schools need wellness centers because some students need more than one-on-one help instead of a counselor, because 9 out of 10 times a counselor is juggling more than 100 students at a time. Umaya, who's 18, said there should be more focus on students' mental health and school activities. Leanne, age 15, said we need resource centers to help kids understand and effectively communicate their feelings and emotions. Funding should be provided for better programs, including sports equipment and equipment for girls' teams. BROSIS urges the legislature to fund an independent and community-led school governance commission that includes students, parents, caregivers, educators, and other stakeholders to articulate a transition plan towards local control within the decade. To begin shifting power to communities, we urge the state to replace mayoral appointees on the panel for education policy with at least 5 elected parent positions to increase the youth panel membership to 5 and give these members voting power by 2026. Finally, and I apologize for going over, the state should provide public education to eradicate and inform community members about NYC school governance. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate us being heard.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you to everybody who's been with us so far. As I mentioned earlier, we were going to be very honored to be joined with the chair of the Education Committee and the City Council, Council Member and Chair Rita Joseph. So I just want to give her a couple of seconds to say some words.
Thank you for having me. This is such an important conversation. Prior to coming into the council, I worked under Mayoral Control from 2002 up until 2021 when I recently left the classroom. So I'm here eager to hear from young people to make sure that we get it right this time around. Listen to educators, parents, and I wholeheartedly agree that young people should have a voice at the table since we are making decisions for them. And I always, in my words, always say we should make decisions with them. So thank you for having me, and I'm here to listen, take notes, and support you. Thank you for having me, Public Advocate.
And we are so grateful to be joined by the chair of the Education Committee. Again, we remind those that are here to please feel free, if you are so moved, to raise your hand. If you were not planning to give testimony, but now would like to give testimony, and we will promote you to panelists. And we also want to remind you that you will be made panelists by accepting that panelist button. Next up, we have Tazeen Assad.
Hello, everyone. Peace and blessings. My name is Tazeen Azad, and I am the Brooklyn Borough President's appointee to the panel for education policy. I'm here testifying on my own behalf and not representing the DOE nor my Brooklyn Borough presidents and their stance. I'm here to advocate for the elimination of the extension of mayoral control and the convening of an independent commission to explore new governance structure for New York City public school system. And I also want to thank you, Public Advocate Jumaane Williams and Chair Rita Joseph for convening this hearing and continuing to be accessible to the community, especially the students for whom we are here today and this system is in function. We've heard many passionate examples and testimonies from everybody, but I'll focus on something that I've been experienced as a BP appointee on the panel, and that is the experience around contracts. Every month we pass contracts that are millions and millions of dollars worth, but we pass them without having any assessment of whether or not these contracts are efficient, effective, or needed by the community. It seems like more often than not, it is whatever that the DOE feels like is appropriate, and we're not given any access to the community themselves to find out whether or not these contracts are needed by those specific schools or the district or the city as a whole. We are not privy to the discussions that certain committees are holding in preparation for the proposal of the contracts to distinguish the contracts guidelines, their adherence, why and who is appropriately vetting them. We have no idea of that. We're repeatedly told that they are in function, but we don't know who they are as panel members. And so it puts the burden on those of us on the panel who want to hear from the community to do that work on our own, at our own expense, and recruit folks to really give us on the ground accounts of what is really needed and whether or not these contracts are appropriate for those communities. I'll say also that I have an opportunity on the panel to give first testimonies or first assessment of whether or not utilization proposals are appropriate for my borough. And till this day, any proposal that we thought was in opposition to what Brooklyn communities need have not been heard by the panel at large. And eventually, all of those votes were accepted despite community input. And I'll tell you, I've produced extensive reports and accounts of people asking for the removal of those proposals. So I'll finish by saying that Brooklyn Borough President's appointees and the Controller's appointee are meant to be accountability pieces on the panel for education policy. But in fact, what we learn in briefings are not to be brought back to our Borough President's office for us to discuss and elaborate at length on whether or not if they're effective for our district. So there are functional issues in the mayoral control pieces at this point, and we must reimagine what governance structure should look like, where parents, teachers, and community members have extensive ability to share their experiences and inputs as to what is best for their community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We are now going to promote the next panelist. Thank you for bearing with us. Emma Alata will be next. Thank you. We should be ready for you to begin. Emma, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you for the invite. I will first like to make a disclaimer. I'm not talking for my CEC nor the borough president. I'm talking out of my personal experience. And first and foremost, thank you for, I've been on since you started, and some of the panelists are fantastic. With regard to mayor control, I've been out here for quite a while at different levels throughout the city as a citywide, high school, DLT, CECs 3 times around. And I think it's a problem when we have mayor control. Folks ask us to vote for them, but they don't speak for us. My problem has always been parent engagement. We need to have our parents at the table, which means we need to have a voice. Anytime you put someone in control and they allow their folks to be in control, it takes away from the panel. It takes away from the parents. Mayor control is a danger. Cutbacks, budget cuts is a danger. We're the largest school district in the United States, but yet we're suffering. The district I'm in is definitely suffering. My thing is we need to end mayor control. Also, if you are coming on and saying you want me to vote for you and you will be my mouthpiece and you don't do it, I'm sorry, you get. I will be going to Albany tomorrow and fighting. And I belong to different groups, and I will serve as long as I have a mouthpiece to fight for the New York City public school system, in which my 3 adult children actually went through. Thank you for this opportunity. Fight, fight, fight.
Thank you so much. And speaking of our students, we do know that there are some students that are about to get on any moment onto this webinar. We know that today is actually a great day for students to be able to give testimony, as many of them are home or with their siblings and family members with the professional development day. And so we will give few more moments. We will be here, but we will just take a 3-minute break while we wait for those students to get on, and we will be back. So please stay with us. We will be back in just a few minutes. Thank you all for taking that break with us. Next up, we have Stephanie Bonilla.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Bonilla. I am an elected CEC member for the 75 seat, but I am not here under my title. I am here as a concerned parent. Or my counsel. This is the first year that a D75 seat has been added to CEC to represent district families and not just citywide, as it limits our family voices as one of the largest districts in New York City. As a parent, Mayoral Control hinders all children with disabilities and IEPs. Cuts hinders all children and related services and academic support they need in order to succeed academically in the school environment. Equity is presented in the platform of the previous and current mayor, as equity is key to many things. Parents and students and community members should have control of schools, not the mayor, as he does not have the best interest for school communities. I hope you consider how this affects us as a community and a city, and not just one person view, which is what and how Mayoral Control is formed. Please end Mayoral Control. Parents should be able to voice their voices. Instead, they are suppressed by government and district leaders, and by doing this, students end up not getting the things they need. These 75 schools are in need of updated playgrounds, classrooms, water fountains, disability accessible bathrooms, availability, etc. I have a school that when it rains outside, it rains inside the school. How is this possible in 2024? And how is this happening? After schools are hard to get for special needs students, and with budget cuts that we're trying to get our students and children more independent, it will be harder to achieve. More workshops should be able to be given for parents to know their rights, even if they're not parent leaders, as well as students workshops should be given in order to know their rights. Some of it, as high school students, could be part of SLTs, CECs, PEP communities, and even part of their own IEPs, but they are unaware of these things. We need to listen to our youth, teachers, parents, on what they need. Thank you for giving me this time to speak today. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. We all trying to promote Zachary Tomlinson as well. Zachary, you will be next.
Good evening. Good afternoon. My name is Ava. I'm 15 years old and I'm a student at Metropolitan Expeditionary Learning School and a youth advocacy director at Integrate NYC. Since mayoral control has been enacted in New York City, the mayor's political decisions has continuously shut out and dismissed the opinions of parents and teachers, as you've heard. However, I'm here to testify that in addition, no mayor has made an investment in civic participation of students who are most impacted and deserving of a seat at the table of their own education. Youth participation on various panels and boards, from school leadership teams to community education councils, are largely not filled. Adults would assume this is due to a lack of interest, when in fact it's due to exhaustion with being treated like a token and patronized. Reasonable accommodations and accessibility are not considered for meaningful participation. In addition, these spaces often have little protection from bias and harassment, which courageous youth who do participate have experienced time and time again. What we find most disappointing is that at the highest level, the little has done to enact ideas offered by the Chancellor Student Advisory Council group. Nor do any of the students who sit on the panel for educational policy have any voting power. High school students work and pay taxes on their income and are affected daily by the decisions of officials appointed by the mayor today and for the rest of their lives. We deserve to have a vote. Instead, many of us join advocacy groups and take time from homework, studying, to protest and make demands to the mayor and chancellor who have shown that youth opinion have no value. It was our protest that created the DOE's Office of Student Voice, which to this day is staffed by one person for over 1 million students. There is no investment in students having self-determination over their own schools and future. Please end mayoral control for the sake of creating space for students' rights for self-determination. These are our schools. Give student panel members, Community Educational Council, and Panel for Education Policy a vote. Plan to increase voting membership to 5 elected youth, with adults supported by 2026 on all governance.
Hi, my name is Mia Rivera. I am 17 years old and I'm a student at Millennium Brooklyn High School and the youth director at Integrate NYC. Okay. We have for 10 years attempted to repair the legacy of a racially segregated and inequitable school system that still exists today. In 2019, near the end of their term, the mayor and school chancellor announced that the city would adopt 62 of 65 recommendations made by the School Diversity Advisory Group on policies to advance school diversity and integration. Since then, nothing has changed. The new administration has expressed no political will or recollection about the city's commitment to desegregating and bringing equity to NYC schools. In a school system serving almost 1,000 schools, placing control in the hands of one person has removed power from parents, students, and educators. Communities deserve to select their education leaders, plan and create programming that meets the needs of our community, investing in the creation of welcoming and inclusive school environments, selecting culturally responsive curriculum, and ensuring communities have a true voice in school decision-making. I understand that a transition to community school governance will not happen overnight, and school integration is a complicated process. However, please fund an independent and community-led advisory group that includes students, parents, and caregivers, educators for a fully elected and diverse school board for our schools by 2026. Give us back our schools.
Hi, guys. This is Chair Joseph. I had a question. What was some of your top 5 recommendation in the School Diversity Commission that was so important to you?
I think for us and as an organization, Integrate NYC, which is youth led, we have like the 5R initiative, and representation when it comes to students not having proper or adequate representation when it comes to teaching staff or the curriculum is very important. The amount of resources students are allotted is also very important because we're both in high school and college is very difficult. And if you go to an inner city school, getting those resources and getting connected and going to a college might not even be an option or an opportunity for you. So those 2 things or those 2 aspects we find to be really important. Yeah.
About the curriculum. What would you like to see different with the curriculum?
Oh, okay. Well, personally, I think that schools I feel like it's not just an issue with the curriculum, but also the teachers who teach the curriculum. I think it's difficult to learn when you're not seeing teachers that are that you can see yourself in or are representative of your community in the school. And also I think that often schools tend to sort of follow the textbook and follow a really standard process of teaching, while I feel like there's a lot of subjects that aren't touched upon, especially for APUSH classes or history classes that are mandatory for the core curriculum. I think that making sure that they're integrated with stories from all communities because it's important, because I think that
students from all like places and students from all cultures come to schools in New York City, and I think it's important for their stories to be told too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here. And again, we're so grateful. So many students came to testify today. Your leadership is astounding, and we are so grateful and better city for it. Next, we will have Avi Glickstein.
Hi, I don't want to take too much time because I know that there's more important voices that should be heard. And thank you again, Councilmember Joseph and Public Advocate Williams for doing this. And my unfortunately former council member, Joseph, I've been moved into another district with redistricting. My name is Avi Glickstein. I'm a co-president of the PA of PS 139 in Flatbush. And again, like other people who have spoken, I'm only speaking as a parent, and I'm not representing that organization or any organization in the city. I've been thinking about mayoral control in the context of the migrant families that we've been seeing coming through our school, as well as neighboring schools. And the fact that some of the arguments around mayoral control have to do with the ability of one person to be more nimble or more able to, quickly address problems. And that has clearly not been the case when it comes to addressing the migrant children who are in the schools and addressing their needs effectively. The other day, my first-year-old came home and said that they had said goodbye to one of their classmates who I knew their family was being evicted from their shelter. We found out later they got an extension for a week, but this is kind of happening all over the district, which also encompasses Floyd Bennett Field, where families are being shuttled around and there's nobody to push back on it. I think about my sort of in the context of what one of the things my mother did when I was growing up was she was a guardian ad litem in the court system, which is a third party who is there to represent the needs and the voice of the child in a custody fight or any sort of court case that involves a child. And along with having a body that represents the parents and the families of a district, we need one separate bodies that understand the district and understand the needs of the families in the district to be able to push back against policies in other areas that are affecting the families in that district. And we don't have that when we have one single voice. Even if we have a superintendent in every district, that superintendent answers to the chancellor, who answers to the mayor, and it doesn't work. And we're seeing that today. And I just want to shout out all the parents and people who are picking up the slack in the community, as well as parent coordinators who are the unsung, I think, heroes. Some of the every member of the school staff are, but parent coordinators are some of the most underpaid, overworked members of our school community, and are really doing a lot to mitigate this situation. So thank you so much for your time and for holding this hearing.
Thank you to PS 139 for holding it down. That's my alma mater. And we met with them last week with the 30-60-day rule, and it is heartbreaking. I've been to 4 rallies already yelling and screaming about this. So we'll continue to fight. Thank you, Avi, for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Teresa Arboleda.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us and holding this forum. I am the public advocate appointed to the Citywide Council on English Language Learners, but that's just for ID purposes today. I'm speaking for myself. As a former member of District 3 Community School Board and a former borough president appointee to District 3 CC, and now as a public advocate appointee, I provide a unique perspective on mayoral control. During the 20 years that the school governance system that gave the mayor control of New York City schools has been in effect, it has not proven to be the panacea that would fix the problems of the system that gave limited control to the local districts throughout the city. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh,
hear you.
okay. Okay. Before scheduled sunset on June 30th, 2024, the school governance issue must be examined as to its overall effectiveness. The New York State Education Department is conducting forums on mayoral control and is seeking testimony until March 31st and will be releasing a report in the end of March. So it's important that everyone submits testimony to them as well. Mayoral control of New York City public schools also must never be included in budgets, in the budget approval discussion, but must be debated separately and in depth. Schools can be assured that with each newly elected mayor, the system will be turned upside down. Michael Bloomberg, the first mayor to be granted control of New York City public schools, immediately and completely reorganized the system by organizing the 32 local districts into 10 regions. Parents were used to knowing where to go locally if they had a question. There was a generally known local hierarchy, including the principal, the district office, the school board liaison to the local school, as well as coordinators of subject areas, such as math, ELA, special ed, bilingual ed, social studies, and G&T. The main regional office was often miles away from the parents' local schools, making it difficult to become informed. After some years, the system under Bloomberg was again flipped to assign schools to participate in an education network. This meant that the district superintendent was no longer the educational leader of the district, and the network leader for some schools was possibly located in another borough and not easily available to local parents and community. Many schools were closed and protests by parents in the community were largely ignored. New schools, including charter schools, were often located in the buildings where schools had been closed or redesigned, which sometimes meant loss of the use of the gym, library, and other facilities. While the greatest upheaval of the system occurred under Mayor Bloomberg, Mayors de Blasio and Adams also revamped the system. Both have created different policies, staff positions, and rules and regulations. Pre-K for all under Mayor de Blasio was a positive. The jury is still out on Mayor Adams. Under all three mayors, there has been a lack of consultation, or if consultation took place, parents in the community were usually ignored. The PEP replaced the old Central Board of Education and was a rubber stamp for whatever the mayors wanted. Members are often immediately removed if they do not follow the wishes of the mayor. There are no checks and balances. The 23-member PEP with a mayoral appointee majority grants the mayor too much power. Too many proposals that are almost unanimously opposed by the community have been approved because the mayor's appointees always vote in his favor. Chancellors appointed by Mayor Bloomberg too often had little or no background in education and needed a waiver before approval. Mayor Adams has appointed an educator, and Mayor de Blasio did appoint 3 educators as chancellors and had a more cautious approach when it came to closing schools. This is a very brief overall picture of some negative effects of mayoral control on the public schools, on the families and the community around them. During local control, New York City mayors were often frustrated and sought more power over New York City public schools from the legislature. One mayor even threatened to blow up the Board of Education. Let us not miss this opportunity to explore, discuss, and establish a system of school governance that will really work to benefit our New York City public schools. Thank you very much.
We would like to ask if there is anyone else who joined us here today that would like to give testimony and has not gotten a chance to, please raise your hand. Thank you. With that, we will move to close out our forum with our final words from our chair as well as our public advocate.
Sure. Thank you for continuing to be a voice in your children's education as we continue to listen to families, students as to how we should govern our New York City schools. Thank you, Public Advocate, again, for having this very important conversation and allowing young people to come and speak about what matters to them, because I always say they must be at the table when we make decisions for them. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone who came out today, including the students, and to make sure that their voices were heard. On behalf of my entire office and our entire city of New York, thank you for participating in today's virtual forum on mayoral control of NYC schools. We have two asks of you tuning in today. Again, we ask and encourage each of you to submit written electronic testimony on New York City mayoral control to New York State. We will put the link up here via the New York State Education Department. Written electronic testimony, again, must be submitted by this Wednesday, January 31st, 2024 at 5 p.m. You can also still attend, for those who have the ability to, the final in-person state hearing on Staten Island tonight, 6 to 9 p.m. at New Dorp High School, 465 New Dorp Lane, Staten Island, New York, 10306. Again, I want to thank Chair Joseph for joining us today. My entire team of the Office of Public Advocate made it possible. Thank you so much, and I appreciate y'all, and we'll see you soon. Peace.
The recording has stopped.